All praises unto the Most High. We give him thanks unto thee, Father, for another beautiful day that you have made, and we are here to rejoice and to be glad in it. Yes, Israel, it's another beginning of the Sabbath, and as usual, I'm going to be dropping another lesson, right? And this information is for us to kind of get ourselves a little bit more, um, familiar with our history if we didn't know. You know what I mean? Some might not, right? So if you didn't, well, you're in the right place right now to get some information because, in the week I also did a lesson basically, talking about our history, right? And who we are and basically where we come from. So if you did miss out, go ahead and check back the last video, right? And you can get a good, insight into, where we're coming from and who we are, if you didn't know, because we are the children of Israel, right? So that would be all the people who were parents were taken into slavery and were scattered on ships, to the four corners of the earth, right? So this is your history, right? So I'll be speaking today about King Solomon. So I do have a video here, which this video will be highlighting the life and legacy of King David. Sorry, King Solomon. But King David was his father, and King Solomon reigned in his stead when he um, went to sleep with his fathers, right? All right. So I'm also going to read from First Chronicles 29, from verse 19 down to 30, right? And this will give us um, a little oversight into when Solomon got crowned, right? So before David went to sleep, he actually, made sure that Solomon was the one that would take his place to continue the work of the Most High, right? So with no further ado, Israel, let's get straight into it, right? So I'm reading from KJV, which is the King James Version, and also from Chronicles 1, chapter 29, verse 19 down to 30. Okay? All right, and it reads, "And give unto Solomon my son a perfect heart, to keep thy commandments, thy testimonies, and thy statutes, and to do all these things, and to build the palace for which I have made provisions." And David said to all the congregation, "Now bless the Most High or Elohim." And all the congregation blessed the Most High or Elohim, their fathers, and bowed down their heads and worshiped the Most High and the king. And they sacrificed sacrifices unto the Most High and offered burnt offerings unto the Most High. Unto the morrow after the day, even 1,000 bullocks, 1,000 rams, and 1,000 lambs, which their drink offering and sacrifices in abundance for all Israel, and did eat and drink before the Most High on that day with great gladness. And they made Solomon the son of David the second time and anointed him unto the Most High to be the chief governor, and Zodiac to be priest. Then Solomon sat on the throne of the Most High as king instead of David, his father, and, and prospered, and all Israel obeyed him. And all the princes and the mighty men and all the sons likewise of David submitted themselves unto Solomon the king. And the Most High magnified Solomon exceedingly in the sight of all Israel, and bestowed upon him such a royal majesty as had not been on any king before him in Israel. Thus David, the son of Jesse, reigned over all Israel. And the time that he reigned over all Israel was 40 years. 7 years reigned in Hebron, and 30 years and 3 years reigned in Jerusalem. And he died in a good old age, full of years, riches, and honor. And Solomon his son reigned in his stead. Now the acts of David the king, first and last, behold, they are written in the books of Samuel the seer, and in the books of Nathan the prophet, and in the books of Gad the seer, with all his reign and his might, and the times that went over him, and over Israel, and over all the kingdoms of the country. So there you go, Israel. That was just a quick um, summary of when King David gave the throne unto Solomon, right? So you can actually go into Chronicles and just read continually, gives you more of what David did in his time when he reigned as king, right? So we're gonna actually go into the video now to give you more, more summary on King Solomon, and to let you know that Solomon was a very wise king, and he was very known in those days. And as you can know, his name still lives on, right? So with no further ado, Israel, let's get straight into it, right? All praises unto the Most High.
King Solomon, according to the Bible, the wisest and the richest man who ever lived. Today, on the Black Excellence and Abundance channel, we will be taking a look at the life of the richest man who ever lived, King Solomon, the son of King David. Yes, the same David who slew Goliath, the same David who became king of Israel. We know that from biblical, historical, geographical, and archaeological evidence that the Hebrews were black, as depicted here in this Assyrian relief. The Assyrians were one of the first to enslave the biblical Hebrew Israelites, and this drawing by the Assyrians shows how the Hebrews looked. Notice the locks of their hair. Notice the beards. Hebrews always wore beards, and they always had locks. The reason we find it necessary to show and establish the earliest depictions of the Hebrew Israelites as black, because oftentimes we see all types of images displaying the true Hebrews as something other than what they really were. Nothing can tell the story better than the people who were themselves there when the Hebrews were enslaved by the Assyrians, other than the Assyrians. Again, we want to make it clear that these slides that we're showing are from the Assyrian captivity by the Assyrians of the biblical Hebrew Israelites. Further proof of the true images of the biblical Hebrew Israelites can be found in the catacombs of Paris, France, where in the catacombs can be found the earliest depictions of the Hebrew Israelites. Here's a picture of what is believed to be Solomon, showing the actual color of his skin. Black. Solomon was a black man. These are more images of the early Hebrew Israelites before the Renaissance. And it is obvious who these people really were. Scratch a lie and find a thief. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Bible, the Shulamite woman told Solomon, "I am black yet comely, black and lovely as the tents of Kedar." Ladies and gentlemen, this is a tent of Kedar. An early picture of the Black Madonna and the baby Yeshua, baby Jesus, who incidentally the Pope prays to. Folks, I think it's quite obvious who the real biblical Hebrew Israelites were. Now we can go on and on and on and do a whole video on just that subject. But this video is about King Solomon, the wisest and the richest man in biblical history. Now that we've established the identity of this great black Hebrew leader, King Solomon ruled from 970 BC to 931 BC, and during this time, he is said to have received 25 tons of gold for each of the 39 years of his reign, which would be worth billions of dollars today. Along with impossible riches amassed from taxation and trade, the biblical ruler's personal fortune could have surpassed $2 trillion in today's money. In addition to the taxes paid by the traders and merchants, the kings of Arabia and the governors of the Israelite districts also brought him silver and gold. Solomon made 200 large shields, each of which covered with about 15 pounds of beaten gold, and 300 smaller shields, each covered with about 8 pounds of beaten gold. He had them all placed in the hall of the forest of Lebanon. The king also had a large throne made. Part of it was covered with ivory, and the rest of it was covered with pure gold. 6 steps led up to the throne, and there was a footstool attached to it, covered with gold. There were arms of each side of the throne, and the figure of a lion stood at each side. 12 figures of the lions were on the steps, one at either end of each step. No throne like this had ever existed in any other kingdom. All of King Solomon's drinking cups were made of gold, and all of the utensils in the hall of the forest of Lebanon were made of pure gold. Silver was not considered valuable in Solomon's day. He had a fleet of ocean-going ships sailing with King Hiram's fleet. Every 3 years, his fleet would return, bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and monkeys. King Solomon was richer and wiser than any other king in the world. They all consulted him to hear the wisdom that God had given him. Each of them brought gifts, articles of silver and gold, robes, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. This continued year after year. King Solomon also had 4,000 stalls for his chariots and horses, and had 12,000 cavalry horses. Some of them he kept in Jerusalem, and the rest he stationed in various other cities. He was supreme ruler of all the kings in the territory, from the Euphrates River to Philistia and the Egyptian border. During his reign, silver was as common in Jerusalem as stone, and cedar was as plentiful as ordinary sycamore in the foothills of Judah. The Queen of Sheba came specially to Jerusalem to hear Solomon's wisdom. She was so impressed that she gave him camels, jewels, and a large quantity of gold and other gifts. She presented to King Solomon the gifts she had brought, almost 5 tons of gold. Part of the reason that Solomon was so wealthy, it was that the people loved him. They came to him from miles around for his advice, and they all came bearing gifts, usually of gold, silver, and all types of herbs, spices, and amenities. According to the Bible, Solomon's temple, also known as the First Temple, was the holy temple in ancient Jerusalem. This temple was built as a monument to God, as well as a permanent home for the Ark of the Covenant. Although the temple had been built by Solomon, the idea for its construction was conceived by his father, King David. The Israelite king had intended to build a great temple in order to provide a permanent home for the Ark of the Covenant, which contained the stone tablets on which the Ten Commandments were inscribed. However, the Most High forbade David from building this temple, as he had shed much blood during the many battles he fought in. Thus, it was only a generation later, during the reign of Solomon, that the temple was finally constructed. The structure was 3 stories in height. It had ledges on which the floor beams rested. Around the structure was a series of chambers of varying size. The temple was also provided with windows of fixed latticework. At the rear, this edifice was also known as the Holy of Holies, which was in form a perfect cube, each of its dimensions being 20 cubits. The interior was lined with cedar and overlaid with pure gold. Chains of gold further marked it off from the Holy of Holies. The floor of the temple was of fir wood overlaid with gold. The doorposts of the olive wood supported folding doors of fir. The doors of the Holy of Holies were of olive wood. This edifice was one of the most amazing buildings ever erected. The Most High Yahweh gave King Solomon what he did not ask for. He asked for wisdom, and the Most High blessed him with riches beyond his wildest dream. He was, in fact, the richest man, the richest king of all kings in the Bible. During King Solomon's reign, the Israelites enjoyed an unsurpassed peace and prosperity. The Black Excellence and Abundance Channel, where Black history is every day. Thanks for watching. Please like.
All praise unto the Most High. So there you go, Israel. A quick rendition of King Solomon's reign and what all that basically he did. I said really and truly, there's more information in terms of in depth, but that is the gist of it. But if you really, really want to go into it more, go and read the Bible. That's why I tell you, when you read the Bible, it's not just because people attach this type of religious or Christianity type thing to it. It's not that. It is a book which is a history book. Also, it's a book with the law, a book of law, where it tells you, all the laws and statutes. And also, it's a blueprint, a guideline to how we should live as a people, and especially Israelite, because the Most High made a covenant with us. And these are the great counsels that the Most High, uses prophets to write for us, so that we, over generation and generation, if we should keep them, we would be we'll be good. We'll be having good success. If you notice when I read it, you know, David said as well that he prays for Solomon having a perfect heart to follow the commandments and statutes of the Most High, because that is key, key. You can't go wrong when you follow the laws and commandments of the Most High. So if anybody tells you that you should not follow the laws, obviously they're going off, because the Bible tells you. I mean, there's so many times it tells you. I mean, I could go on and on, in different books, different from Old Testament to the New Testament. So trust me, go ahead, read it. Matter of fact, you can read from King David, from his reign, come straight down to Solomon. So you can read from Samuel, Kings, and coming straight over to Chronicles, right? All right. So with that said, Israel, I'll say, have a blessed, Sabbath when it comes, and have a blessed day. Be at peace with the Most High, and love your brother like how you love yourself. And just remember that the Most High is always with you, and He's never not there. But as long as you take the time out to do things which He lays out that you should do, then trust me, all things will go well with you. So with that, I'll say, Israel, have a blessed day, and until I see you again, shalom, shalom, one love.